Hello everyone, I'm George from Ireland. I'm on Finchley Road in London, the St John's Wood area. Behind me is the house of Madame Tussaud. So, but shouldn't it be pronounced Tussaud? It ends in a D, and French words at the end of a consonant usually have the consonant silent. Anyway, so Madame Tussaud, she was born in Strasbourg, France, in 1762, if memory serves. Her surname was originally something Holtz. I've forgotten it. It's a decidedly Germanic surname because Strasbourg is in Alsace. That's the extreme east of France, bordering Germany. So a lot of people spoke Alsatian, that dialect. But she was fluent in French. I don't know if she spoke Alsatian or not. So she grew up in a middle-class family. When she was little, her father died, and the family then moved to Bern, Switzerland, where they lived with the Dr. Curtius, and her mother was housekeeper for this man. I'm not sure why he had a housekeeper, maybe he was unwed. Anyway, she was very fond of Dr. Curtius and called him uncle. So he taught her how to make waxworks, and this was to be her living. So she returned to France as a young woman and achieved renown at making waxworks, very useful for artists. People didn't have to model for hours or days for these paintings. And women in those days seldom went to school. Not many men went to school, and women, if they ever got jobs, tended to be the worst paid jobs available. They'd marry young, have as many children that they could, and completely economically dependent upon their husbands. But she was actually able to make a fine living for herself. And so she's very in demand by the court and all the great and the good in Paris. And then the French Revolution came. Now wax heads, I know they're made by her, of Jacques Necker, the finance minister, were carried in protests, maybe to indicate on a pole that they wanted to decapitate him. So the revolution broke out, and later she fell foul of the revolutionaries, and she was arrested, and she was liable to have her head smitten off because she was perceived as being a royalist. And someone she met in prison was Josephine de Beauharnais, or what's her real name, Tascha de la Pagerie being her maiden name, as in the future wife of Napoleon Bonaparte. And so Marie Tussaud had her head shaved in preparation for the guillotine. But she had friends in high places, and one of the revolutionaries were able to intercede for her and have her not only avoid the death penalty but actually set at liberty. So she made death masks to many people after they were executed, and so we have very good likenesses of very prominent people like Maximilien Robespierre because of her. So she married, she had 3 children, but 2 of them died when they were still in swaddling bands. In 1801, the Peace of Amiens was signed between the United Kingdom and France. That's why there was Amiens Street in Dublin, or Amiens Street as people used to call it. Anyway, she came to this country in 1802, just before war broke out again, and she stayed here. Despite being a French citizen, perhaps surprisingly, this French citizeness was not interned because she could have been here for espionage. So she carried on her work, making many wax figures that became very popular. And so she travelled around the British Isles displaying her collection of wax figures and made herself a very tidy living, which is why she's able to afford that splendid house over there. So she carried on practicing Catholicism, in which she was brought up. She died in 1850, died very peacefully. She lived to the age of 88, and then she's buried in a Catholic church on Cadogan Street. I can't remember which one it is. So her son, Francois, he carried on her business, and then Madame Tussaud's exists to this day. It's one of the major tourist attractions in London, on Euston Road. And there's a Madame Tussaud's in Dublin, there's a Madame Tussaud's in where is it? Amsterdam, and so on. So these images, they're extraordinarily lifelike, and they'll take the measurements of the person, they'll be completely to scale. They'll be so convincing. If you see them, some places you actually believe it's the person. Like the Margaret Thatcher one wasn't that good, but the John Major one was extraordinarily realistic. And he stood beside it, you couldn't tell which was which. You can pay to have your own waxwork made. So they make waxworks of famous people. You're no longer famous, they sometimes pay to have them melted down. All right, that is enough about Madame Tussaud's house. It's not open to the public, and she's very close to Lord's Cricket Stadium. Okay, toodaloo.